welcome to Building Relationships with Students. I am Amy Wagner. I'm part of the Beginning Teacher Development and Support Team here with CMS, and we are always here to support you. So we're going to dive right in. So here's our agenda that we're going to go through today. So we're going to talk a little bit about mindsets, self-care, positive language with your students, starting the day off right, and class meetings, then tips and tricks when things go wrong, and then we're going to wrap up. So this is a powerful quote that you may or may not have seen, but I love it, and I love to keep it in the forefront of beginning teachers' minds. Teachers who put relationships first don't just have students for 1 year. They have students who view them as their teachers for life. And I must tell the story as I did the last time I gave this PD. My father was a high school teacher at Statesville High School, and he taught DECA, which is kind of the old school CTE courses. And then he also taught physics, and he was the wrestling coach. So he really was very good at building relationships. Now he taught there in the 80s. And when he passed away in 2010, the procession line or the receiving line at the funeral was full of students that were now middle-aged men and women that he had taught, mostly men because it was mostly his wrestling team, but full of people that he had impacted 20 years prior, some of them 30 years prior. Those relationships are so important, and you really have the opportunity as a teacher through your relationships to leave that kind of legacy for yourself. So keep that in mind as you are working to build relationships with your students. Now, I love these three mindsets, and these come from Origins book sets. The growth mindset, a lot of us are already familiar with this one. This is the space of possibility that we hold for each student. It's our belief in their capacity. Then there's the active mindset, and that is the support of each student through the good times and the bad, which demands a commitment of the heart and mind fueled by courage and a sense of urgency. And then the last one, objective mindset. And I think this one is really important when it comes to building those relationships with your students. The ability to interact with students without taking what they do or say personally. And this is difficult because the normal human reaction to student disobedience or lack of respect is to feel hurt or angry or defensive. So staying objective and knowing that probably what's behind that behavior has nothing to do with you is very important as we're working and dealing with our children. And by children, I especially mean those high schoolers, because they know how to push our buttons sometimes. So it starts with you taking care of yourself. If you're not taking care of yourself, you are more likely to react negatively. You're more likely to be more impulsive and reactive. So really make sure that you're taking time for yourself. This is a great book that you see on the screen, The Self-Care Prescription. If you need a summer read, that might be a good one. But it talks about all the different forms of self-care that you see on the slide here. And some of them, we don't automatically think about when we think about that self-care aspect. So if you get a chance, check that book out. One more thing before I move to the next slide. Something that I like to say when we talk about self-care, and I actually am stealing this from one of my colleagues, but if you can try to think of one thing you've done for yourself in the past week that's dedicated to self-care. And if you think about that and you can't think of anything, then that's a good indication that you need to increase the level of priority that you're giving to your self-care. So then we are taking care of ourselves. Next, we need to create that safe, risk-free learning environment. So tips and tricks here: anticipate areas of frustration, and that starts with having really strong lesson plan that you've internalized. Think about where the students are going to struggle before you implement that lesson, and be ready to head off those and to, scaffold to help with those. Have a cold call system so you hear from everyone equitably. I go into a lot of classrooms where I hear the teacher calling on the same student over and over again, and they're the one that really wants to participate. And I did the same thing as a teacher, but it's important for us to make sure that everyone's being held accountable. Everyone needs to be on the same page with us, and we can't leave anybody behind. So make sure as you're calling on everyone, you don't call on someone for a second time until you've heard from everyone else. Let students know it's okay not to know. That's why we're in school. You're there to help them. Don't give up on a student. Um, and by that, I mean, there's a lot of ways to take that. But what I'm thinking of is in classrooms, sometimes I will see a teacher call on a student and they don't know, or they're taking a long time to answer. And the teacher will immediately move on to the next student and ask the same question. And I did the same thing a lot. Um, but that kind of sends a message when you move on from them, that maybe you're not holding them accountable, maybe you don't have the same expectations. So think of ways to get around that so that you're not moving on, you're not giving up on that student you called on. So give plenty of wait time, rephrase, give hints, offer choices to your question. And worst case scenario, have a phone a friend system so they can, reach out to help from another student. And that's still keeping them involved in that. But when you hold your students to high expectations, you are saying that you are loved, that student is loved, and that you believe in that student. And that is definitely the message that we want to send. And if you're in a room or an environment where you hear the students kind of making fun or picking or, being unkind if someone doesn't know, take advantage of those class meetings. That's a good chance to work on that, because those skills sometimes need to be explicitly taught. And I just want to touch on using positive language. Um, as teachers, we have to repeat ourselves a lot, and it gets really frustrating. And that's why having your directions displayed visually for students can be a real lifesaver. It's also important to remember that it can be hard, even for adults, to remember all the directions of a task. So, as I go through these phrases that we're all guilty of, think about them. So, positive language is on the left. So you might want to say, look up, I want to see your smiling face. I used to tell my students that if they keep their head up, more blood and oxygen can get to their brain. And that would help sometimes. You could say, I don't want you to miss anything. Do you need me to reread it for you? I mean, if a student is spacing out when you read something and they miss it, it's okay to just reread it for them. We all are guilty of that, and we shouldn't make too big of a deal out of it for them. It's okay, take your time is a great one. And I mean, I know you hear this a lot in your programs, your educational programs, but so much time sometimes that it's a little uncomfortable for you. And you should always get to the point where you're thinking, okay, maybe they're not going to answer. And that's when you know you've given them enough time to answer, when you start to, second guessing yourself. So, some language though that we're sometimes guilty of saying on the right, this is the negative language that we want to stay away from. This is easy. Please don't say that. We just went over this, and I know we just went over this, but try not to say it as much as you can. You weren't paying attention. We've all been there. We've all not paid attention from time to time. So we just have to expect it as developmentally appropriate, and appropriate for us as humans, that sometimes we are going to lose focus, especially with the long days that these students have. And you should already know this. Stay away from that one. All right, next. Here are just some general ways to get to know your students. There is one-on-one conferencing, class meetings, just observing your students out at, you know, physical activity time, maybe sitting in when they're at specials or just in your classroom. Interest inventories are great. Icebreakers, we love them. Parents and guardians, talking to them is a great way to get to know your students. Writing assignments, having lunch together, community building activities, and school events. If you can, really try to go to some of those outside school events and get to see your students in other settings. They really appreciate it. And here are some icebreakers. We love a good icebreaker, and they can be used in so many different ways. So, looking at this image, what is one icebreaker that you could use with your students? And you will see this image again later on a Padlet that we have. So don't worry if I go away from this because you will see this again. Okay, and my video is not showing, but there's a fabulous video of this teacher in Wisconsin with her kindergartners, and she has a different greeting for each one of them. So if you get a chance to Google that or look on YouTube for it, I'm sorry it's not showing up here, but it is a great one. Let me make sure it's, oh, there it is. Hold on. I was looking at a different view.
Okay, sit down. Abigail, which one do you want? Thank you. Good morning. Brian, good morning. Good job. James, good morning. Emma, which one do you want? Okay, come on. Good morning. Good morning, Finn. Good morning, Allie. Which one would you like? Jackson, which one would you like? Which one do you want? Colton. Ready? Good morning.
So that is great. And also, what I love about this one is like she keeps it moving. And sometimes, you could hear them in the classroom getting a little riled up. They were excited. So keep it moving so that, you're not having them in there without you too long. So that she does such a great job with that. Now, let me see if I can click past here.
Okay, sit down.
Uh-oh. There we go. All right, so here are some more ideas for greeting students. I especially like the toe tap, the funny faces, and the dance moves. And you can take just a moment to look at these, and they're also going to be in the Padlet that you'll see in a second. I know with COVID, maybe the hugging and the high-fiving might not be able to do that as much, but there are a lot of really fun choices that you can think about for greeting your students in the morning. And classroom meetings. These are an investment designed to cultivate class culture and build relationships. They allow the teacher to be an active listener and be more vulnerable and genuine and empathetic with the students. And again, when you start to see the children treating each other unkindly or, needing help with their social skills, these morning meetings, and for high school, maybe it's only a once a week meeting, but they can be a real game changer for building your classroom community and building relationships, not only between the student and the teacher, but also between the students. So I really encourage you to make this part of your scheduled day and try to keep it as positive and make sure you are explicitly teaching them how to treat each other because they need that. So here is a Padlet, and it is bit.ly relationships Padlet. And they are case sensitive, bit.lys are. So the R should be a capital and the P should be a capital. So in just a moment, I encourage you to pause this video and go ahead and go to another tab and open up this Padlet and take a second to look at it. And I encourage you to add your own tip or trick to the Padlet. This is kind of an ongoing resource that we have. So as you add things, our teachers that come in, new in the next few years will also be able to see your advice. And so that'll, pass along that wealth of knowledge that you guys have. So pause now and go to Relationships Padlet. All right, and so this quote, your greatest challenges can sometimes be your greatest opportunities. Think about that for just a moment and what it means to you in your relationship building with students. So for me, when I look at this, I really think about how we should talk to our students with respect, even when they've messed up, even when they've really messed up. These are opportunities to learn what's going on with students and how to better support them. I worked as an assistant principal for a while, and in that time, you know, in that job, you really get to see students at their most vulnerable, when they're in crisis, when they're at their lowest, and they need someone to talk through those feelings with. And, that happens with you in the classroom daily with your students. So take advantage. See those challenges as opportunities for you to ask, what's going on with you? I'm concerned about. Why do you think this happened? Talk to them. Try to conference with them privately if you can, and be there for them and help them through it, because we all make bad choices from time to time. All right. So thank you for participating in this PD. And I just have one more request of you. Um, there is a survey, and you can see it in the blue circle in the middle. It's another bit.ly. So again, it is case sensitive, but it's bit.ly/relationship exit. The R and the E are capitalized. And I would love your feedback on this professional development experience, and as well as how myself and our team can continue to support you. What PDs do you need? And we will work to create those for you. So again, bit.ly/relationship exit. I would love it if you would pause right now before you even get out of this training, open up another tab. It'll take you 2 minutes to complete that for us, and we would be very appreciative. And thank you all so much. I really am glad that you were here, that you participated in this, and please let us know how we can further support you. Thank you.